Well, we're here at the CCA workbench, and Dave, I'm really looking forward to this segment because I know you and I are going to be filming a Sportsman's Adventure episode, swordfishing, and I can't wait. So
well, we're going to learn. We're going to learn a little bit. I mean, I've done it a few times. The first time I did it was down in Venezuela in like '95. That was the first time I did daytime sword fishing. It's been around for a while in other places, and mainly because in other places where they don't have a lot of current, it's a lot easier to do than it is here in Florida. You know, daytime sword fishing in Florida is a very technical. I mean, it makes blue marlin fishing, you know, look tame in comparison. It's very technical because of the depth that you're fishing and the current. You know, a lot of the guys on the East Coast and in the Keys, they're dealing with a good, you know, Gulf Stream current when they get out to 1,600 feet and deeper. And it's really a challenge to try to keep their bait underneath the boat. And it's very important because when you're got that much line out and you're in 1,600 feet of water, you got to keep it real close to the bottom. And if you're right on top of the bait, you can see the bite. And the bite on a swordfish when he's 1,600 feet down is kind of like that.
That's it.
You're watching, and everybody's staring right at that one rod. You're only using one rod. You're just staring at that one rod, and that rod will go, hey, we got a bite. Oh, really? Right. And then you go over there and you start cranking, and hopefully it'll come tight on the other end. But you know, it's just a long way. And they have so many. I went fishing with Ray Rocher. He came to a Marlin U, and we were specifically trying to catch swordfish. And I fished with those guys 4 days, and I couldn't tell you how we did it. I mean, they have to back troll. They have to, yeah. Well, both. They have to back troll in that current to keep on top, and they're using these big, it's made out of coat hanger wire that they use. It's a big L, and what it'll do is it'll hold the bait in a big L shape, kind of like the ones you see on the little leaders. You know, you'll buy a surf leader. Right. Well, it's the same thing except on a much larger scale, and they'll hang that thing on their line, and it'll be a hanger so that they can actually shake off the weight. Just really technical stuff. But at nighttime, like you said, it's a lot easier. It's kind of like catching a catfish, really, because what we'll do is we'll float a big jug. We'll get a Gatorade bottle and put a Siloom stick in it, and I'll measure off my distances, because I want to have one about 100 feet down, one about 300 feet down, and one about 400 feet down. You know, it depends on where you are, and you know, the thermocline. If you got a really good sounder, you can see the thermocline, and you want your baits to be bouncing, at least one of them to be right on top of that thermocline, either in the day or the night, if you can see it on your chart. So what we'll do is we'll put another light down close to the bait.
How do you turn these on, Dave?
Well, these are water activated. These are lingering pigments, and I tell you, if you want to know anything about sword fishing, if you call those guys at Lingren and Pittman, Timothy Pickett, he's an engineer there, and he fishes with R.J. Broyle and Brett Holden, those guys. He knows a lot about catch. He's caught a ton of swordfish here in Florida, and Lingren and Pittman, they make all this stuff to catch them. And he told me he would use sometimes a leader that's 100 feet, you know, 100 foot of 250 pound. And what he'll have like 70, or I mean, he'll have like 80 feet of 250, and then this big connection with a nice swivel, and then another, you know, 30, 40 feet at the end of 250 again. Still 250, he uses the same all the way through. And what this does, mainly because when you're doing this in Florida, you're kind of slow trolling.
Right.
You know, you say you're bumping along, but you're actually slow trolling. So they have to use really streamlined baits down here in Florida. They'll use a squid that's really tied up, real tight, or they'll use bonita bellies that they'll sew up real, they call it a taco. You know, they'll sew it all the way up so it's like it looks kind of like a taco when they get done with it, and it's got a nice
like swordfish tacos.
Yeah, exactly. And it's got a little, you know, tail at the end. You know, sometimes two tails, and that thing is pretty much slow trolling it, whatever the current is, right along the bottom. And you want it pretty close to the bottom, you know, because that's where during the daytime all the swordfish are down on the bottom. And at night, they come up in a big migration. There's a whole benthic migration. All the little squids and everything in the whole ocean comes up at night. And when they do that, the swordfish come up with them, and that makes them in our range and a lot easier to catch. If you're not one of those guys who knows how to do all that back trolling and getting out there in the deep water.
It sounds like there's a lot to learn.
There's a lot to learn. There is. I would suggest you go with a good guide 2 or 3 times and let them teach you how to do it.
All right, Bree, I know that you're in favor of going with the guides. Where are we going next?
Yes.